Hello. Another question we get frequently on Twitter and after talks is whether a shared code ownership and team topologies kind of can work together. And in team topologies, we generally recommend to avoid shared code. Not because shared code is a bad thing per se, it's just that at the speed of modern software development, it's very hard to keep the necessary levels of trust and alignment between different teams to ensure that the code keeps evolving and stays healthy. And so what often happens is that this idea of shared ownership leads to lack of ownership. And there's no one actively looking at the code of, at the health of the code, right? Until at least there's a problem that we need to solve. And so shared code can work, but it needs higher discipline. It needs higher trust between teams. And that might be hard. And for many organizations, that is not the normal situation. And so, especially with rapid pace of change in our business requirements, change in our systems, and change in our teams as companies grow, or because of staff turnover, inevitably some parts of the system will start decaying, and they will start looking a little bit like what you see on the left in the figure in the background, where some parts of the system don't have clear owners, and when a problem occurs in that part of the system, we start scrambling to find out who changed the code, who knows what this code does, are there any tests? And so that's what we're trying to avoid, right? That's not a sign of healthy code and evolvable systems. Another kind of related question we get then is, okay, if we have teams that are the owners of different parts of the code and the system, does this mean that people cannot move and change teams? No, that's not the case. So code ownership does not prevent people from changing teams. Yes, learning a new system, learning new code is going to take some time. It's not always easy. But it's also quite hard to reshape a team, right? That also takes time to rebuild a team and gain the right level of trust inside the team when a new member joins. So when we compare both kind of the cost of learning new code and the cost of reforming the team, the later is much higher. And so that's kind of something we should be thinking about when we're moving between teams. Not that it's a bad thing again, but how do we do this effectively? And so there are great books and resources around that. For example, Dynamic Reteaming, a book by Heidi Helfland is quite good. And finally, the fact that we have ownership of code assigned to different teams does not mean that other teams cannot change it. What happens is we need a good model to do that. And so, for example, the inner source model, obviously based on open source, where a team might say and announce to other teams, look, if we don't have the availability to change the code to meet some requirement that you have, then here's the way that you can change it. And so we outline as a team, how can others change our code? Is it through pull requests? Do they have to create new tests? Do they have to show us that they've run all the regression tests? Do we have to do a code review together? Whatever it is, we as a team that owns the code can lay out what is the right approach. And this actually provides more flexibility between different teams with different practices, different ways that they want to ensure the code of their service remains healthy. So that's actually a good thing. And in Team Topologies, we talk about the idea of a team API, where it might be a place where we describe as a team what is the process, what is this inner source model if other teams want to change our code, if we think that's possible and it's a good thing. So there are definitely ways in which we can keep code ownership by different teams, so not shared. So we ensure there's continuous care for all the parts of the system, and at the same time allow for the flexibility for different teams to change other teams' code if in a kind of controlled way that is meeting the needs and the practices of that team that owns the code. So effectively, we need ownership so that the different subsystems evolve and are curated and have a vision and kind of long-term care, which is quite difficult again with full shared code ownership. Um, Again, it might work in very mature, stable organizations where there's very little change in teams and systems, but we know that's often not the case in modern software and the current markets and changes that we see every day. So I hope that was useful, and I'll see you next week.